Hey, I'm Dan McDunn. I'm the owner and founder of McDunn ADUs. We work out of Berkeley, California. We build accessory dwelling units in the Inner East Bay.
I'm Carrie Shores-Diller. I'm an architect and I'm with Inspired Independence. We have a specific passion for designing accessory dwelling units. As an architect, we really need great building partners to help us realize our designs. Dan, what do I call you?
Well, you can just call me Dan. So, I've been building for about 20 years. I had a brief stint in the corporate world after college and realized quickly that cubicle life was not for me. I found a production home building job as a superintendent out on the East Coast and built a couple different subdivisions over the period of a few years and really got a deep dive into the production home building environment where we would go from dirt to keys in 90 days, 2,500 square foot homes, 10 or 11 at a time, and in a corporate setting, Fortune 500 home builder on the East Coast. And so that translates to my appreciation for the ADU market because we can go from dirt to keys in about the same time scale and run multiple sites at a given time. So some of the skills I picked up as a production home builder translate really nicely to the accessory dwelling unit market.
What happened in 2016 is that some new powerful legislation went in place, and that allowed the state to basically say, stop fooling around. We need affordable housing, we need more housing, and this is a great way to do it. And when the state put their new laws into effect, they officially named these units accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. When we started prototyping, we called it a parent pod until my mom said, you're not putting me in a pod. But you can hear them called granny flats, or Dan, what do you call them?
Accessory dwelling units, man caves, woman cave, trash pad, in-law unit, granny flats, backyard cottage, that's my favorite. I like that idea of a cottage, that makes me very happy. But they're really all the same thing, and they are detached backyard structures where people live.
The great thing that happened with the new laws is that it streamlined the approval process. These cottages are by right, so if you meet the requirements, if you meet the zoning and the rules, you get to go right through planning.
There's no complicated bureaucratic permitting process. You can get a permit generally within 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the municipality, without neighborhood involvement, without a big yellow sign, without a zoning entitlement nightmare that you might be accustomed to experiencing in the Bay Area or certainly reading about. And so from a homeowner's perspective, that's value, but as a business owner's perspective, it gives me some predictability into my pipeline. There's no invisible bureaucratic process to try to understand as to when I'll start my next project.
Dan and I are trying to show that we're working as a design-build model.
But we're two different companies.
We do the architecture.
And I do the construction.
Our process is getting you through all the decisions and choices so that the contractor can give you a real-time price and figure out to get you in the schedule to get this cottage built. And that's what I would really invite you to make sure that you have is a team that collaborates, whether it's my office with another contractor, whether it's Dan with another architect. It's about how well they collaborate, because you want to make sure that this team has experience building ADUs. They know the pitfalls and the different things that come up with ADUs. I've talked a little bit about my process, but Dan, what's your process like?
My process is one of ready, fire, aim. And I'm just kind of joking, but I do like to adopt a philosophy of getting things done. And so that's just one way of saying that we get ready to go and we start. And but that's not necessarily entirely true. I do like to get involved in the design process that gets towards permit submittal. We look for opportunities to value engineer a project, maybe look for opportunities to improve the constructability of the design. And prior to going in for a building permit, we will have met with you, Carrie, and your team and the client as a way to make sure we're submitting the most efficient building plans possible.
When people start thinking about backyard cottages, they're a lot of times thinking about them for multi-generational living situations. They're putting an aging parent or making space for an adult child, and inherently in that decision, there's just a lot of overwhelming choices and things to think about. And a lot of people do worry that they'll be too small, they'll be crammed, they'll be something where it's not really going to support the person that's going to live there. But one of the challenges we've assigned to ourselves is that we're going to figure out how to design these things in an incredible and inspired way. So how do you use light to sculpt the space to feel bigger? How do you borrow space from outdoors to bring that indoor-outdoor in? And really think about how people are going to live in these. Like, what material palettes are going to make you feel like this is your home? Like, what design choices can we help you decide on that make this place feel like you've always been there and that you've always wanted to be there. The truth is, if we really design for how you're going to live in the space, we figure out where your things go, we think about how you really live, this space might support you in a way that really exceeds the place you're living now.
I mean, one of my favorite things about working with Carrie and her team is that they've got incredible taste. Bottom line, all the materials have been specified by a professional. They've worked with the building owner to collaborate to get something that's not only tasteful and high design, but something that the owner of the property really appreciates because they've been involved. We end up with really fantastic results and stuff that I'm proud to leave behind when we finish.
One of the things that I feel like is important to talk about that nobody wants to talk about is aging. People are not typically proactive. What we're trying to do with Inspired Independence is make sure that we can show you that your space and your life can be supported and independent, but in a way that's very inspired and not institutional. I had severe spinal injuries when I was in my 20s, and I was a young, stubborn architect really fighting my own environment, and I thought, why is this space not supporting me? Why can't this space help me navigate this time, which luckily was temporary? There's some smart design choices people can make that don't add cost, they don't add a lot of time, and inherently they're embedded in all of our units. But we make sure when you're building a new ADU that you can go from the inside to outside with no threshold, no step up.
You think these features were there just because they're cool and modern. They actually make the space more livable and more accessible.
We also make sure all the doors are wide enough to support that if you needed to get through it with a wheelchair or walker, that you could. There's some really fun, interesting things we discovered when we became certified age and place specialists about how our bodies work. So you might see a gorgeous roll-in shower. It just blends in from the floor, but the truth of that matter is that's also an accessible shower.
Our experience incorporating these features means they'll be done right while adding style and accessibility.
A lot of times people have really separated designing for aging and good design. But what we're really trying to do with Inspired Independence is put those two things together, because there's no reason as creative, thoughtful architects that we can't take the same approach that we would take to a high-end client and apply it to how to make an accessible bathroom. I mean, one of our real missions is that everyone should have access to good design. And our expectations of design is that it supports people in the fullest way possible. And that's at your low points and your high points. Okay, well, I like to always describe myself as a recovering optimist, but we've got to get the numbers out of the way because these ADUs are amazing. I think you'll find that the math will work and they're a great investment, but they're expensive. And here's what we're doing. We're taking the cost of a big house and we're shrinking it down and putting it to a small square footage with all the expensive pieces. We have a foundation, we have connection to utilities, we have the kitchen, the bathroom, the heating system, and we need that. I love it when Dan talks about the price of square footage.
ADUs are expensive to build for sure, but like in a lot of the markets we build in, Berkeley, Oakland, Rockridge, these are areas that support for sale housing values upwards of $1,000 a square foot. And if we're able to deliver 600 square feet for $600 a square foot, there's really $400 per square foot of nearly instant equity that's there to create. So like from an economics perspective, they're nearly a unicorn because you can borrow to build them and have instantaneous equity that is, otherwise unattainable. The land cost of basically zero.
It might be that Grandma had a house on the peninsula and she took out a line of credit, paid for the in-law unit, and then lived there and rented out her house on the peninsula and was in a cash flow positive position. There's also kind of a sweet spot with ADUs. A lot of times people will come to us and say, oh, we just want to do a little 300 square foot unit. But the truth of the matter is that the 300 square foot unit has all those extra costs at the beginning. And once you get into 5, 6, or even 7, you start to get a better return per square foot to develop. We see properties that go up for sale with an in-law unit are getting snapped up right away.
Here in the Bay Area, we have a scarcity of land. Not many people are going to have the opportunity to design and build their own home, like you might in other markets where there isn't that problem. So an accessory dwelling unit might be the only time in their lives they have the opportunity to work with a designer and a builder to collaborate on what really amounts to an art project in their backyard. And so it can be a very fun and rewarding process if you're working with the right team.
I think one of the things that we're finding is that clients are looking at prefab, there's some very enticing, really, I think as an architect, beautiful designs. But the truth of the matter is that not everybody wants to live in a glass and steel box in the backyard. You know, I think one of the successes of how you design these units is to think about how you site it, how it sits in the yard. Are we being mindful of how the sun moves, of whether you like to have your morning coffee outside in the sun or you want to sit in your garden and feel like you have some privacy from the surrounding buildings? We go out and do a site analysis where we're looking at what's next door, where are the noises, where's the peaceful places, and then we talk to you about how you're going to want to live there, how you think about privacy between the main house and the rear house. Because I like to say, you need a design for the day where everybody wants to be outside and they don't want to be together. That's when it's going to be a successful design. If everybody wants to be outside and be together, the space will find a way. Dan, is prefab a good choice for some people?
You know, prefabs are good for some people. Our clients seem to value the entire custom design process because when you go through the exercise, not only do you get the siding correct, you have an opportunity to design a building that really supports your lifestyle, both now and in the future as your use of the building evolves.
One of our core principles as architects is making sure that we're doing practice that is sustainable. And these backyard cottages are such an exciting way for cities to grow. What they're doing is they're using existing land, existing infrastructure, schools, roads, etc. But we're adding more density. And that is getting us more housing, it's keeping it affordable, and it's just providing more opportunities for families. You know, I think we meet with people and we see if it's a good fit. You know, the other great thing is it's worth a phone call. If we're not a great fit for you, we probably know someone who is. And I think it's our intention that we help people build more ADUs, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so whether we're your team or we've just helped educate you, we hope we brought you some value, and you can reach out and give us a call.
We always love talking about design, right?
That's right.
We just go out and talk about design.
Yeah.
Don't have to build an ADU at all.
Should we go?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. Okay.